breaking updates. Very important.
She's also just a spoiled, entitled, narcissistic brat.
But I was basically the only person in the theater. Very few people wanted to see this. Even the little kids who like Disney movies, even they don't seem to be turning up in droves for the movie because the movie is really, really bad.
And to everyone who hates when I win, the winged victory came to the Louvre in pieces, and people still line up to see her.
Oh my God.
And I can only hope.
What does that mean?
That despite my flaws,
Oh.
and despite my cracks and my breaks, and there are many of them, that at every premiere and everything I do, people will wait in line to see.
This is what theaters look like across the world, and it just keeps getting worse. The memes. Let's say that you were in a Hollywood movie, and the trailer for that movie dropped on YouTube, and it instantly became the #1 most downvoted trailer in the history of the platform.
The movie was absolutely terrible. It's not the single worst movie I've ever seen, but in every way that the movie differed from the beloved 1937 original, it was worse.
The reason we had Rachel Zegler on the docket is she's an asshole.
Welcome back to the channel. So, Rachel Zegler just had a full-on meltdown after Snow White crashed and burned at the box office. Picture this. The Magic Kingdom didn't just crumble, it imploded. And instead of taking the L with grace, Rachel basically threw a tantrum, ditched her tiara, and started wailing like a scratched-up record. Word is, her ego got inflated faster than a balloon on turbo mode, and when the backlash came flooding in, that thing popped in the loudest way possible. Buckle up, y'all, because what you're about to hear is a wild ride of how one actress's big mouth managed to turn a legendary fairy tale into one of Disney's messiest flops. But what actually caused the audience to turn on her? How did a fairy tale icon get dragged into meme territory? And why does it seem like every time Rachel opened her mouth, the situation got worse? Before we dive deeper, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe if you're here for the stories they don't want you to hear. This one's wild, and trust me, you're gonna want to stick around. From the jump, Disney had high hopes for Snow White. They were aiming for something shiny, fresh, and super modern. They wanted to flip the old 1937 classic on its head. No more dusty Prince saves princess storyline. Nah, they were going all in on new era, new rules.
And I get it, there's a difference between spoiling and whatever, but to go out and badmouth everybody and talk smack about, older movies in the same franchise, the canon story, I guess?
Yeah.
I don't know, dude. I feel like they would have had better control of it.
Because, apparently, romance is out and awkward interview soundbites are in. And here comes Rachel Zegler, fresh off a big musical hit, ready to take on the role of Snow White with all the energy, and maybe just a little too much attitude. Disney thought she was perfect, young, talented, full of fire. But what they didn't count on was that her confidence might actually be overconfidence.
With Snow White, let's go through this, right? There's no prince. Woman doesn't need a prince.
Oh, look.
Really? Okay, good luck back then.
Before the film even hit theaters, Rachel started turning every interview into her own personal hot take session. She poked fun at the OG Snow White, cracking jokes about how outdated it was for a princess to need saving from a prince.
I'm gonna stand there 18 hours in a dress of an iconic Disney princess. I deserve to be paid every hour that it is streamed online.
On paper, maybe her comments could have worked if she'd just said, "We're going for a more modern angle." But nope, that was way too chill. Instead, she acted like she was holding the keys to the kingdom of cinema, throwing shade at the original and calling it, well, kinda creepy. Talk about throwing shade at the very thing that got her the gig. With each new soundbite, her tone got more and more smug.
Doesn't need a prince to save her, and not surrounded by 7 weird people. Oh, okay, just CGI fictional goblins, I guess.
There are spoiler alerts here if you intend to see the movie, which most likely 100% of your audience does not. They replace the prince with a common criminal. So there is a prince-like figure, but he's no longer a prince, he's a criminal. They clearly want to diminish the love story. I think after the backlash from those comments a year and a half ago, whenever they were, they did beef up the love story a little bit, but nevertheless, he plays an ancillary role.
Like a teenager roasting anything older than her last selfie. The PR spiral kicked in fast. The studio tried to smooth things over, promising fans they'd love the changes. Yay for diversity. Yay for strong leads. But they forgot to mention they were swapping out the dwarfs for what looked like forest randos or CGI weirdness. Fans were confused, critics got suspicious, and the memes started rolling like an avalanche. Rachel, though? She just kept talking, louder, sassier, and even more dismissive about anything from the original film. It felt less like she was excited for a remake and more like she was on a mission to roast a classic. When the trailer finally dropped, it got roasted harder than burnt toast. Millions of fans stared at their screens like, what did we just watch? Downvotes came in like a tidal wave, and the comments? Brutal. Instead of realizing the promo might have flopped, Rachel jumped on socials posting videos showing off empty theaters, like she was flexing on the fact no one showed up.
I know that you've told me before that your version of Snow White is different, and it's more of a 2022 version of Snow White. What did you mean by that?
I mean, the original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her. Weird.
Super weird.
So we didn't do that this time.
Some folks thought maybe she was joking, but others were like, you really want to post that, Rachel? But the advice didn't land. She hit share anyway, and boom, another meme storm. It was giving accidental comedy gold. Honestly, behind the scenes, studio execs were sweating bullets. The budget was already sky high, promo costs were through the roof, and even Hollywood vets were giving the side eye like, here we go again. And just when it couldn't get messier, it did. The movie finally hit theaters, and barely anyone showed up. It was like a ghost town in there. People started snapping pics in empty auditoriums, making jokes about how the popcorn machines were working harder than the plot. Disney tried to put a spin on it, saying it was misunderstood, but fans weren't buying it. All they saw was a pricey disaster with a lead who seemed more into roasting the source material than celebrating it. Social media? Oh, it had a field day. Tumbleweed memes, sad nachos, you name it. Somewhere in the chaos, Rachel seemed to realize, maybe, just maybe, going full snark mode wasn't the best plan. And then the whispers started. Was she getting dropped from other roles? Word on the street said Pixar nixed her from a Toy Story 5 cameo. Then came the rumor that her name quietly disappeared from a Pirates of the Caribbean reboot. Industry insiders started calling her the new face of PR fails. This wasn't just a meltdown, it was a full-on nuclear-level implosion. People joked that if you Google self-sabotage, her photo would pop up mid-eye roll. Disney, meanwhile, was left cleaning up the wreckage. CEO Bob Iger was already catching heat with theme park slumps and streaming losses. Snow White tanking just made it worse. Critics started dragging the studio for focusing too much on messages and not enough on, actual storytelling. Longtime Disney lovers felt like the magic had been swapped out for lectures. They wanted a respectful reboot, not a side of sass and hot takes from the lead actress. Marketing panicked. They pushed out new TV spots that came off more desperate than anything. It was like handing out party invites after the cake's already been eaten. Even the movie's original cheerleaders started backing away slowly, mumbling stuff about how maybe Modern White wasn't ready for prime time. Imagine how different things might have gone if Rachel had just dialed it back and showed a little more respect. Maybe the remake could have sparked curiosity instead of full-blown outrage. Instead, it turned into a cautionary tale, how not to handle a major Hollywood role. Could Rachel bounce back? Sure, Hollywood loves a comeback. Plenty of stars have face-planted and made a solid return with some humility and a standout role. But right now, the meltdown is the headline. No one's talking about her vocals or the CGI. They're stuck on the drama and the eye-roll-worthy interviews. Silence. This whole saga kicked up even more debates, like is Disney pushing social stuff too hard? And why are they constantly remixing the classics in ways that tick off their core fans? At parties and panels, folks were shaking their heads, swapping stories about when actors respected the legacy before rewriting it. Now it feels like fame can crumble in a flash, thanks to a few cocky interviews and a serious misread of the fanbase. The Snow White remake will always be remembered more for the drama around it than anything actually on screen. It proved that even a mega studio with the most iconic characters can't force people to love something that feels off. These days, pulling a Zegler basically means don't trash the job before you've even done it. That doesn't mean Rachel's done for. She could step back, drop an apology, land a solid indie role, and remind everyone she's got real talent. But until that happens, this meltdown will be the one thing people bring up. A Hollywood blooper reel moment that actors and PR teams will study for years. The kind of thing future stars whisper about like, yo, don't go full Zegler. It's wild how fast a dream gig turned into a full-on circus. Some folks think she'll pull off a comeback. Others say she's just going to be a footnote in Disney's list of what were they thinking? Either way, this whole mess definitely left a mark. Snow White deserved a better rollout, not a messy PR saga full of clapbacks and Twitter fights. Still, if we're being real, it was entertaining in a totally chaotic kind of way. And if there's one thing to take from all this, sometimes it's best to keep the bold opinions to yourself, at least until the movie's actually out. And that's the tea on one of the biggest Hollywood flops of the streaming era. Rachel's ego may have taken a bigger dive than the box office, but let's be honest, this trainwreck? Legendary. It's the ultimate reminder of what happens when hype meets hubris and fans aren't here for it. So if you got a laugh out of this, or just love watching the Hollywood circus unfold, hit that like button, subscribe, and tap the bell so you never miss the next meltdown. We got more chaos coming, studios blowing budgets, actors going rogue, and wild behind-the-scenes moments that'll have you cringing and cracking up. Drop your hot take in the comments. Was Rachel's meltdown just the start, or the peak of Disney's drama era? Got memes? Predictions? Let's hear it all. And if you share this video, congrats. You've officially brought your friends to the funniest Hollywood mess they didn't know they needed. Thanks for sticking with us through this wild breakdown of a Disney disaster. Stay tuned, stay sharp, and keep your popcorn close, because the show, it never really ends. See y'all in the next one.